Never give in, never give in, never, 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 in nothing, great or small, large or petty. Never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense. Hear the gravel in those words. Not a slogan, not a poster line. A vow delivered to young men in a bombed island, when the future was a rumor and fear ran the streets at night. Harrow School, 1941. The man who said it had already lost the Dardanelles, resigned in disgrace, worn a soldier's coat in the mud to work his way back, and now sat at the top of a country that might not see another spring. So why begin here? Because that sentence, exact, spare, relentless, is not a museum piece. It's a handle. You can grab it on a bad morning, at midnight, on the day you taste ash. It's a rule for the next step when you have no map, and it came from a life burned in failure and rebuilt in duty. Let's walk into 3 rooms from Churchill's world. A school hall during the Blitz. A quiet letter written to the only person who could see him at his smallest. And a victory lunch where he pulled victory back from the cliff of hubris and renamed it the end of the beginning. In each room we take one principle and bring it into our lives, today. Not as an ornament, as armor. First, the hall. You can almost smell dust and damp coats. The sirens have been visiting. People are tired. Some are pretending not to be. Outside, London still smolders in places that yesterday were homes. And Churchill, now heavy with war and responsibility, stands and gives the shortest curriculum of courage you'll ever hear. Never give in. The rhythm matters. He repeats it like hammer blows because he knows the enemy in the mind doesn't surrender to facts. It gives ground to repetition. That's the first lesson. Courage doesn't always arrive like lightning. It drips. It accretes. It grows when you teach your own nerves a rhythm that outlasts panic. In practice, that looks like doing small things with stubborn precision when your head wants to spiral. It looks like planning the next 3 hours, not the next 3 years, because the brain can choke on horizons in a storm. And notice the clause, except to convictions of honor and good sense. Courage here isn't mule-headed pride. It's stubbornness aimed at the right target. Churchill wasn't telling fragile boys to be stone. He was telling them to learn the difference between surrender and adjustment, to quit the wrong thing fast, to persist in the right thing longer than fear thinks you can. What does that look like for you? It might be resisting the doom scroll and writing the email you owe. It might be walking back into a hard conversation you've been avoiding, or sitting with grief without numbing it because you refuse to let pain turn you into smoke. Never give in is small, daily, mechanical. The mind learns the shape of your days. Teach it to finish. But let's not pretend he found those words in triumph. The second room is smaller, quieter. Ink, paper, a lamp that burns late. No speeches here. Just a man writing to his wife, after Gallipoli, after the papers called him reckless and worse, after resigning from Admiralty and going to the front. He tells Clementine what it feels like to be stripped of music and color. He admits what shame does to a man. He doesn't hide. That's the second lesson, but it's sharper than it sounds. The temptation after failure is to hide inside a story. Either I was robbed and the world is blind, or I'm finished and there's no more road. Churchill writes instead, and it's not a performance. He names the loss, he inventories his errors, and he sets himself to work with what's left. He trades theater for craftsmanship. Imagine you're in that place, your project closed, your leadership questioned. You said something you shouldn't, and watched it shatter trust. The Churchill move is not to disappear or to scream for a new audience. He went to the mud. He put on a uniform and served under other men. He drew maps for the living, not epitaphs for himself. How does that translate? When the big thing breaks, build small visible wins. You don't announce the bounce back. You create it. You show up 30 minutes early. You send the note that takes responsibility with no excuses. You study. You make one process leaner. You keep a private scoreboard that doesn't lie. And like he did, you keep your circle close enough to tell you when your pride is wearing a mask. There's a psychological reason this works. After a fall, the brain loves absolutes. Always. Never. Finished. Fraud. To break that spell, you need data points that contradict the story. Small tracked wins do that. They say, not over, not yet, not you. And that, multiplied by weeks, starts to rebuild the internal vote of confidence you need to lead anyone, including yourself. But now step into the third room. The air is warmer. There's laughter in it, some relief, and yet a seriousness under the silverware. November 1942. Allied troops have taken the first major bite out of the darkness. People want to celebrate. Churchill raises his glass and refuses a fairy tale. He gives them something better. Now, this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. But it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning. He doesn't let success rewire the meaning of work. He reframes it. That's the third lesson. Name your phase correctly. Success isn't a destination. It's a transition. Mislabel the moment, and you relax when you should retool. Think about your life this way. You finally hit the number, got the job, published the thing, cleared the debt, or made it through the worst treatment cycle. That's not the end. It's the end of the beginning. The next phase asks different questions. Not can you start? Can you sustain? Not can you survive? Can you shape? Churchill taught that midpoints aren't for sleep. They're for design. There's power in that. Because if you've lived under the tyranny of finish lines, you know the crash that follows. Achievement high, purpose low. The Churchill frame prevents it. It says, take the win, then sharpen the tools, build systems that protect the win. For him, that meant supply lines, training, code breaking, diplomacy. For you, maybe it's a morning rhythm, a weekly review, a fixed time for deep work, boundaries that you enforce without apology. The enemy of your next victory might be the glow of your last one. And if you're thinking, all right, these are grand lines born of extreme times, how do I live them in an ordinary week? Here's the answer Churchill would give, not in podium thunder, but in pencil scrawl on a memo. Keep buggering on. KBO. The point isn't poetry. It's grit that looks boring. The day you don't want to do the reps is the day you must. The hour your inbox feels like a storm is the hour you reduce it to 5 actions. The meeting that drains you is the one you walk into with a written outcome and 3 questions that steer it. You don't turn life into speech. You turn speeches into habits. Let's go back and stitch these lessons together so they don't drift like smoke when the video ends. Lesson 1. Courage has a rhythm. Teach your nervous system to finish small tasks in hard times. If big vision paralyzes you, shrink the window. What can you complete in the next hour? What fear is trying to make you do nothing? Do one true thing instead. Lesson 2. Rebuild in the open at the right scale. When you fail, write it down. Name the wound without theater. Ask one person you trust to look at your plan for the next week. Make 3 small bets that earn back trust. Practical, measurable, visible. Lesson 3. Name your stage, not your fantasy. After a win, say out loud, this is the end of the beginning. Then list what a middle demands that a start does not. Maintenance, delegation, standards, review. Protect what you just won by treating it like a bridge, not a castle. And you might ask, what about fear? What about the nights the roof groans and you can't see the door? Churchill had those nights. He didn't romanticize them. He worked through them. He read history. He painted. He wrote letters. He walked with his black moods until they tired of the company. He kept moving the pencil, the pen, the foot. He made useful the hours the enemy wanted to waste. There's a reason his language burns. He spoke as if the unseen listener in the back row, the tired one, the quiet one, the one whose hope was salt, needed a sentence that would lodge. That is our job sometimes too. To say the line in our own kitchen, at our own desk, in our own car, and mean it enough that the body believes. Midway through his leadership, he loved another kind of sentence people forget. Plain orders. He wrote memos that cut through smoke. Short, brutal on fluff. It's a clue. High rhetoric when hearts need fuel. Hard brevity when minds need clarity. Can you do both in your life? Speak hope when your team is cold. Cut the sentence in half when your process is fat. Courage and clarity do not cancel. They multiply. Now pause. Take inventory. Where in your life is the pressure loudest? Where are you tempted to say, I'll deal with this when I'm stronger, richer, calmer, more ready. Churchill would tell you to pick the small, ugly piece you can move today, and move it. You do not need to be the person who can lift the whole wall. You need to be the person who starts the first brick and comes back tomorrow. Because leaders, real ones, do not perform survival. They practice it. They don't shout courage, they schedule it. They don't demand love from fate. They track a few hard numbers and earn trust in inches. Then, when the moment comes, the speech writes itself because the life underneath it is already true. Let me bring you back to the letter on the table. Private pain, public duty. It's the combination that created a history people remember. Not invincibility, not endless victory streaks. A man who refused to be cured by applause and refused to be killed by shame. He finished. He learned. He reframed. He kept going. Now I want to put a practical spine in this. If you were to Churchill your next 7 days, here's the feel of it. You would choose one line as a personal banner. Never give in or end of the beginning, and you'd write it at the top of your daily page. You'd choose 3 priorities maximum for each day, no more, and you'd define what done looks like in a sentence a manager would sign. You would cut one meeting in half by deciding up front the decision needed. You would pick a small endurance practice, a cold walk, 10 push-ups on the hour, or the first 90 minutes without your phone. And you'd never miss it, not once. You'd end the week with a review written like a dispatch. What was won? What is wounded? What needs supply? What happens if you do that for 4 weeks? Not miracles, foundations, the kind that hold even when weather turns. Ask yourself, what would it look like for you to live as if this is not the end, not even the beginning of the end, but the end of the beginning? If you reframed the struggle you're in as training, not trial, how would your next decision change? Would you take the harder call? Would you rest differently? Would you stop trying to prove you're strong and start doing the things strong people do, quietly, when no one asks them to? Strength. He wasn't the hero of every scene. He surrounded himself with voices that argued, with experts who could tell him when the map was wrong. He listened, then decided. That is a kind of courage, too. Borrowed confidence until your own returns. Delegated pride that saves your cause from your ego. It's easy to turn him into myth. A bulldog with a cigar and a stormproof soul. Don't. He was a human being with limits. That's what makes his rules useful. You don't need a perfect temperament to do what he did next. You need a clock, a pen, a standard, and the refusal to let either adoration or hatred decide your day for you. And at the end of this, when you lay your head down, remember where we began. The sentence was not written to impress. It was spoken to install a program in a culture under attack. Let it install in you. Courage as muscle memory, humility as strategy, reframing as oxygen. Mid-roll. Quick pause. What line from Churchill do you most need this week, and how will you apply it in one concrete action tomorrow morning? Tell me in the comments. If this helped, tap like and subscribe so these dark, practical lessons keep finding you when you need them most. Back to the work. Ask yourself one more question tonight. What would a letter to your future self sound like if you wrote it the way Churchill wrote to Clementine? Without performance, without excuses, with duty and love in every sentence. Would you admit the fear? Would you name the next step? Write that letter. Keep it short. Promise yourself one thing you can deliver by tomorrow, then deliver it. And when you hit a milestone next month, don't crown yourself. Smile, breathe, and say, end of the beginning. Then protect the ground you took. If you led yourself through a hard winter, lead someone else through theirs. If you rebuilt trust, build the system that keeps it. If you gained strength, turn it into shelter. The world still needs people who can hold a line. Families need them. Teams need them. Your future needs you to become that person before the crisis announces itself. The training is now. The small, unfamous tasks. The steady voice in your head that refuses to call bad news destiny. The quiet note to a friend that says, I'm with you, KBO. Churchill didn't promise that courage would feel good. He promised it would matter. He didn't promise that persistence would be seen. He promised it would stack. He didn't promise a smooth road. He promised certainty of purpose on a rough one. That's enough. More than enough. So take the line with you. Repeat it in the car. Write it on your page. Teach it to your family. Use it when the software crashes, when the deal collapses, when the doctor calls, when you stand outside a door that contains a truth you don't want to hear. Never give in, except to convictions of honor and good sense. That clause is the difference between fool's courage and the real thing. One day, if you live like this, you'll look back and see a map you didn't know you were drawing. The bad days won't be gone, but they'll be surrounded by evidence. You kept moving, you learned, you reframed, you led. That's leadership, not fame, not noise. The record of a person who chose duty over drama and built a life that could carry weight. And if the night is heavy right now, hear this. The beginning has ended. Your work has changed shape. You are not finished, you are forged. Take the next step, then the next, then the next. The road won't announce itself. You'll build it by walking. Never give in.